think I see a record light. Hi boys and girls, it's me Butch. For those of you who don't know me, this is my channel. I'm Butch himself. I'm 71 years old now as of last month. Today is November the 12th. Smoked some pot a while ago. November the 12th, 2015. So I'm 71 years old now, and if you haven't checked me out before and this is your first time encountering me, this is my main YouTube channel, and I have quite a few other channels: Butch Beaver, Butch Patrol, Butch Guide, Butch Board. I have a bunch of them. But this is the channel that I put the most work into and has the most views, and I seem to be over 1,000 subscribers now. Thank you. I don't know why you come to me, but thank you for coming. So because I'm 71 now and I'm feeling good, I had some health issues, but now I know what they are and they're being treated, and I feel great. Trying hard to be in terrific shape. I'm going to concentrate with this channel more on teaching things and this kind of face-to-face thing where you see my ugly face, and not so much of active videos where I'm out doing video, because now I'm concentrating on my art, my painting. When I was young, I wanted to be a painter. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a theoretical physicist. Let me throw this into you. My theory is that the speed of light is caused by the physical distance, the physical size of the electron. Let's get on. If there's any physicists out there, ask me more about it. So, tomorrow is Friday the 13th. Today is the 12th in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, where I live. And I thought I would tell you where Friday the 13th originated, why it originated, where it originated. I'm one of these people like that Sheldon guy on Big Bang Theory. I know a lot. So way back in the past, I don't want to go on forever and I talk like a dripping tap. Way back in the past, for most of us in Europe and North America and even South America, Australia, those of us who are influenced by what we might call Western culture, we were from about the 8th century, after the fall of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire didn't so much fall as it just sort of faded away. I'm not going to get into that, but after the the capital was moved to Constantinople, and then in the 8th century with Muhammad and the rise of Islam. Islam sort of took over all of North Africa, Spain, everywhere pretty much, after the Roman influence fell away. So what happened in Europe was the Christian church, which you should call in your mind at that time the Roman Catholic Church, became the predominant ruling authority. They even ruled over the kings, technically. The kings kissed the Pope's finger, foot is what they actually had to do. I could tell you an interesting story about the Normans, and the Normans have a lot to do with Friday the 13th, but then I'd have to write a book. If you want to read a good book, it's not in print, but it's at the library. It's called Born in Blood by John Robinson. It's a history of the Knights Templar and the Freemasons. So let's get back to Friday the 13th. So Europe was from about the 8th century right up until the Reformation, the times of the 16th century, King James, when the King James Bible was published in 1605. The Roman Catholic Church ruled Europe, and much of our culture and superstitions derive from the Roman Catholic Church. Things like the word devil. Devil is, I don't want to sidetrack here. There is no devil. Anyhow, Friday the 13th. So what happened is that in France, in northern France, in 1300, a young King Philip IV inherited the throne when his dad died, and the war with England had been going on for 100 years. They were broke. The king was broke. And so the Pope that came to be in power was Clement V. Clement V was sort of a puppet pope of Philip IV. And the way that happened is that the Pope at the time had died, or he didn't like the Pope at the time, Boniface. The Pope was Boniface, so he roughed Boniface up a few times, and everybody knew who did it. I guess he was warned to lay off or something, but Boniface had something bad to eat and he died. So the next Pope was elected, and Philip, he didn't like that Pope either, and that Pope had something bad to eat and he died. And I don't know how many times this happened, maybe just a couple of times, but the church began to realize if they didn't keep Philip IV happy, that popes were going to keep dying. They were just going to keep having bad food, no matter what they did. So they consulted with Philip and said, "Who do you want to be pope?" And he picked on somebody he thought was a nobody, and he became Clement V. So Clement V was pope in 1307 in France. Now, Philip, he was a pretty nasty king, and he was broke, and at one time he was so frightened for his life that he sought refuge with the Knights Templar in Paris in their temple. They called their place where they were a temple. Their proper name was the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Jesus Christ. The Knights Templar are the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Jesus Christ. They're the ones that wear the red cross. That's where that comes from. So all those red crosses, they're Knights Templar, Knights of the Temple. And I won't get into the story of how they came into being. They'd been around since 1112. That's another story. So where was I? I got on like a dripping tap. So King Philip, he sought refuge with the Knights Templar, and they disliked him so much, the story goes, they blackballed him and threw him naked onto the streets of Paris. They didn't like this guy. And the Knights Templar, they only answered to the Pope. They didn't answer to anybody. They had a rule. Their boss was the Pope. So Philip IV, he became aware they were pretty well off, these guys. And he didn't like them at all. So he thought maybe the way to get some money would be just to get rid of them and take their money. So he ordered the arrest of all the Knights Templar in France. France was two Frances in those days. His France was the northern part. So he ordered the arrest of, that's complicated. Anyhow, he ordered the arrest of all Knights Templar in France, and this was sent out in secret, and this was to happen, are you ready for it, on Friday the 13th. October, actually. Friday, October the 13th, 1307. This was supposed to be like an overnight raid, and they're going to arrest all of the Knights Templar. Well, the Knights Templar, they had spies everywhere. They obviously knew what was going on. I hate using that word, obviously. Stop using that word. Anyhow, it happened for reasons we don't know why, but it's fact because it can be checked out, that the Knights Templar, they had the largest navy in the world. They had 200 plus ships, and they were all in port in Saint Rochelle in the south of France on the 12th of October 1307. They were all there. On the 13th they were gone, and they were never seen again. Maybe they were seen again. 15 were reported to have appeared in the Firth of Forth in Scotland. And there's reports that there were mounted knights at the Battle of Bannockbourne. That's another story. So it seems quite probable that King James of Scotland gave refuge to many knights. But 200 knights were arrested, including the Grand Master Jacques de Molay. He was in his late 60s then, or going on 70. He was the Grand Master of the Knights Templar. And he was arrested. And Pope Clement V, he got word of all this, and you can't do that, I'm the Pope. We have to have a proper inquisition. So the king said, okay, so we'll have a proper inquisition. So they had all these knights, and the inquisition went on for 7 years. They tortured them. But in 1310, the king was getting a little impatient with all this inquisition stuff. And so to speed things up, of the 200 knights, he had 54 of them burned alive at the stake in one big grand bonfire. He burned 54 knights alive at the stake in May of 1310. And by 1314, this has just been dragging on so long, the Pope apparently had an agreement. He reached an agreement with the Grand Master, who was 71 or 2 by this time, that if he would just confess to a bunch of things, that they'd let this all go, let's get it over with. So it's debatable whether it was on March 18th or 19th, but most records say on March 18th, Jacques de Molay appeared on the steps of Notre Dame in Paris to confess his sins of homosexuality and who knows what else in front of the people, and that would be the deal, and then they'd let him go. But instead of doing that, he got up and started a tirade against the king and the Pope, denouncing them. This didn't sit too well with the king. It's like, this isn't going well. So the next morning they put him on a grill down on an island down below, flatten him out. Tied him down and put him on a grill. And they had a nice bed of charcoal there, and they laid him on there and they roasted him alive. And rumor has it that he, as he was dying, he screamed he would see both the king and the Pope in hell within the year, and both the king and the Pope were dead within the year. He was screwing with the Knights Templar. Who the hell do you think he was screwing with? This king. So anyhow, the poor old Grand Master, he got roasted alive. The story goes that people were too terrified to touch his remains, but it was on the grounds of a monastery anyway, so the monks eventually rounded up his skull and thigh bones, and the skull and crossbones, or the skull and thigh bones of the Grand Master Jacques de Molay. And it's rumored by most Freemasons and others that study this kind of stuff that the Knights Templar were well aware of the New World. They sailed there, and there are markings on rocks in Maine, Knights Templar scratchings in the rocks on the shores of Maine. And it wasn't so many years later that the skull and crossbones were flying on ships trying to fight the Pope, who was stealing the gold from the Americas. So I'm telling you more than I intended to. The jack-o'-lantern. That is probably an English way of saying Jacques-o'-lanterne. I'm not good at French, which in older French would transcribe as Jack on fire or Jack burning. So the jack-o'-lantern comes back to the Grand Master Jacques de Molay, being roasted alive and his skull glowing for hours. So the Roman Catholic Church, they would have, that was sort of, all of this, what was going on in the church became intermingled with the lore that was going on. So that was back in the 1300s. By the 1500s, we had the devil and all of this ideas of hell and hellfire and all that. That comes from Islam. Even the idea of the devil comes from Islam. You have to remember that Islam was happening from the 8th century right on up till the Crusades, which the Knights Templar were helping with until, that kind of thing went on. So like if you read the Quran, most of you haven't read your Bible if you're Christian. If you read the Quran, God orders you to kill in the name of Islam. Kill the infidels. It says so. Read it. You can read it in the second chapter, which is called Women. The second book of the Quran is instructions for women, how to treat your women and your slaves and stuff, and how you'll be tortured forever in hell if you don't do it. So there's no hell in the Bible. There's no hell in the New Testament. It got translated into the English version just because the word for grave somehow got turned into the word hell. I'm not going to get, I go on now. How long? I've been going on forever. This is probably too long and I'll probably have to do it again. So this is Butch. Friday the 13th comes from the time the Knights Templar were all arrested in France. So bye-bye from Butch, and I'll talk to you again. Where is it? There it is. Bye.